Run Club podcast episode number 97. Jeff Galloway returns. Hey, welcome back, runners, to the Connect Run Club podcast. Excited to have you today. Excited to be in here with Brandon, and really excited about Jeff Galloway.
Yeah, so we're pulling another one from the archive from earlier this year at the Running Summit, but this is a good one. All the other ones were good too, but this is the one and only Jeff Galloway, the number one recognized name in the world of running. You kind of look like Jeff. A little bit.
Really?
It's really because
like
you're bald.
Well, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. If this is what I'm going to look like, I'll take Jeff Galloway.
Yeah, and we're kind of carrying on our Olympic theme. We have a fun interview next week, kind of giving you guys a preview of the Olympics, even though they'll be in full steam. But the events don't really get rolling, track and field, until we're looking at next Friday.
I think so. Can we say Olympics, by the way?
We are, yeah.
Okay.
If you guys have not seen that, we're not allowed to say the Olympics, but I'm pretty sure they got more to worry about, like doping, than us. So, yeah, this is August 3rd, so Friday after next is when they get going. And all of that to say, if you guys go to connectrunclub.com/Olympics, we have a schedule of some of the events that are coming up, and we are going to try and watch them live. So if you guys want to, it's kind of like going to a movie and then talking about the movie while it's happening.
It's like a Mystery Science Theater or something like that?
Yeah, just like Mystery Science Theater. You guys can join in and have a blast with us. So we'll be talking about all things Olympics and see if Justin Gatlin beats Usain Bolt. I read a really good article.
But hey,
really good article about that.
You never know.
But no, we'll get to see the one and only Meb, who's 800 years old, but hopefully we'll win a marathon or get a medal.
Galen Rupp.
Galen Rupp
as well.
And lots of really fast ladies. So anyway, connectrunclub.com/Olympics. And then before we get into the interview, last but not least, when you guys are listening to this, we've got about a week left on our summer running challenge. You guys can join the challenge with us. That is running 3 times a week, 20 minutes a day for 4 weeks straight. And next week is our last week. And if you guys do that, you can win a free pair of running shoes. And even if you have missed all the other 3 weeks, if you guys just do 1 week of 3 workouts a day, 20 minutes at a time, or 3 workouts a week, 20 minutes at a time, you can be entered to win a $20 gift card to Amazon. So check that out. And then we got some more fun stuff coming your guys' way very, very soon after the Olympics. And then, as always, the best way that you can support what we're doing is leaving us a rating and review on iTunes. So if you guys are listening, if you're listening to this on a podcast app, I'm sure there's a way you can actually leave a rating or a review there. Or if you guys go to connectrunclub.com/iTunes, you can check that out. But we've had some pretty good ones recently. I'm going to read you one just as a teaser, and then we'll get into the interview. But this is by Skinny Dog 68. They say, great podcast, guys. I especially loved when you had Tina Muir on, since hers is my other favorite.
There you go.
Yeah, so podcast recommendation, Runners Connect. They do an amazing job. They have a lot of fun guests, so check that one out. But we had Tina on probably a couple months ago now, and she was
really good. And she's fast too.
Really fast.
Yes.
So she had a great article about what it's like to get asked why you're not going to the Olympics. So it was really good. So
interesting.
Check her out. But guys, let's dive into. Actually, before we dive into it, we were just reading about Jeff Galloway, and I believe we mentioned it during this podcast. But he tells a great story of when he was pacing for the Olympics.
Pacing a friend.
It was
for a trial.
For the trial, it was Frank, wasn't it? Frank Shorter?
No, it was another guy, and it was one of his greatest joys was pacing him to be able to qualify for the Olympic marathon. And Jeff actually was in the 10,000 meters in the Olympics. Yeah. And it was said that he probably could have qualified for the marathon, but he wanted to pace his friend.
Yeah. So we're all about running connected here and tying it into the Olympics. It's pretty hard to beat not qualifying for the Olympics in an event so your friend can. It's pretty cool. So Jeff is an incredible guy, super nice guy. One of the nicest people we've ever had on the podcast. And so without further ado, let's chat with Jeff Galloway.
Well, Jeff, thanks again for spending some time. This has been a while, but one of the things that I feel about you that I believe is true is I appreciate your patience. I think it was in 2008 I did the e-coaching through you, and yours truly was pretty hard-headed on the pace, and you kept telling me each and every week, Trey, you got to slow down. You got to slow down. And then eventually I saw the books you wrote, and I thought, you know what? maybe Jeff knows something. Maybe I should slow down on these training runs of mine and apply some wisdom. So eventually, your patience paid off, and I appreciate that.
Well, I must admit that the toughest thing I have to do as a coach is to hold people back, because at some point during a training season, there are one or more episodes when the athlete is feeling great and just overdoes it.
Yep, and it's amazing how easily we do that as runners, and so it's I can completely agree with that. It's so easy to do. So hey, before we dive into it, we'd love to kind of talk about your background as a runner too. I really wanted to ask you this question. We talked with Amby Burfoot last week, and I asked him about Jeff Galloway. I'm like, hey, we're talking with Jeff next week. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to run with Jeff. And he talked about you very fondly. And one of the things he said about you, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. He said that you were very, very methodical as a runner. And he remembers early on you had your workouts, you stuck to your workouts, and on the track you were methodical. He also said, hey, back in those days, I could not keep up with Jeff on the track either.
Well, Amby realized where his forte was. It was in long distance, and where most of us in college were looking at the collegiate events, which didn't get any higher than 6 mile at the time. Amby already was setting his sights on the marathon, and boy, did he show how well it worked in winning the Boston Marathon his senior year. But I had been a student of running from the very, very start, because I was not a talented athlete at all. And but because of that, I had to learn as much as I could. I asked a lot of faster runners and coaches that I respected, and I've been processing all of that ever since.
One of the names that he mentioned, and I was not sure your interaction with him, but just how well and how much of an important figure in Amby's life, I thought I would bring it up to you, was just the influence that John Kelly had in his life. And he just talked about the impact, whether it was from a running perspective or just life in general, but it was really neat to hear the influence of someone like that in someone's life.
Well, Johnny Kelly, the younger, was an amazing influence on anyone who met him. He really cast a long shadow in running, because he not only was a Boston Marathon winner, but he was a builder of men in running and coaching, and Amby was one of them. I fully believe that Amby patterned his pursuit of the Boston Marathon based on the mentorship that he had with his coach, Johnny Kelly. But Johnny was just a superb person, and I'm very honored to have met him through Amby and to have run with Johnny a couple of times.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get started with running in the first place, Jeff? We'd love to kind of get your intro and look. You were one of the absolute pioneers of running. When we look back at it, we'd love to kind of know your background just a little bit.
It's surprising that I became a world-class athlete, because when I started running at age 13, I was a lazy, severely overweight kid. I had gone to 13 schools my first 7 years and had never gotten into a regular pattern of either exercise or sports. And I gained weight. I really didn't like exercise, and certainly not training, because it hurt. And then reality set in. In my 8th grade year, I enrolled in a school that required boys to go out for strenuous athletics after school. And I tried to find the easiest situation. And during the winter of that year, I'd gotten to know some of the other lazy kids, and they recommended winter cross country. And I found that hard to believe. And then I found out why, because the cross country coach was the most lenient in the school, and you could actually lie to him and tell him that you were going to run on the trails in the woods, and then all you had to do was run 200 yards to the woods and hide out. And that's what I did the first 2 days. But I fell in with a group of kids who actually liked to run because they were funny, and they had good jokes. They had good gossip about the teachers and the other kids, and so I tried to hang on to them as long as I could to hear some good, funny stuff. And I got hooked, and I discovered within the first 2 weeks that I felt better, even after a day in which I was physically destroyed, than I had ever felt in my life, mentally and in my spirit. And then the other big lesson was that the runners I was running with were really good friends. They were honest, they were trusting, and you could tell secrets and they wouldn't be divulged. And it was just a life-changing experience, and I have been running ever since.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that. That was one of the things that really stood out from what Amby said the other day. He said that, especially growing up back then, that one of the coolest things was you would just fight tooth and nail with these guys on the course or on the track. And he said, boy, as soon as you cross the finish line, you're best friends and you're sharing the moment together. He said it was really a unique experience you don't get in a lot of other sports.
Well, that's very true, and I have to tell you that there weren't many people that articulated the great benefits that running bestows upon us, such as Amby and myself. We were kindred spirits right from the beginning at Wesleyan, and it was a treasury for me to have shared that time with Amby, both as a fellow runner, and as a roommate, and we're just really solid friends.
One of the things that I love about kind of what you've done over the years is, hey, we know Jeff as a world-class athlete and just some of the amazing career that you had. But, one of the things that I love now is that I remember the very first year I got there, I think it was 2007 was my first marathon. It was in Disney. And we got there the day the half marathon was running. And to look at the number of people who were fighting their own fight at the back of the pack, it really was inspirational. Me driving up for the marathon, seeing people who believed they could do something. So would love to hear kind of the backstory on where the run walk came from. And it's amazing to me how it has revolutionized the way that races are run, and the number of people who can have a belief now that they can do something. Just so inspiring to me. Would love to kind of hear the background of it, though.
Well, to fill in the gaps, from the time I was a fat kid, I gradually lost weight. I got a little bit better each year, but I didn't really show any promise in high school. I didn't even qualify for the state championships until my senior year, and did not get a scholarship to college. So I went to this highly academic school, Wesleyan, and fell in with Amby and Bill Rogers, and we pulled them afterwards too, ever since. But I still did not achieve at a national level in college.
Hey guys, we lost him. I'm about to call him back right now.
Yes, I improved a little bit each year, and I never showed any real potential, even in college, of moving on to that next level. So I went into the Navy having had a low draft number. During my last 13 months in the Navy, I was able to be land-based, and I trained and got back into shape and developed a vision that I just wanted to see if I could qualify to get into the Olympic trials. I was quite a ways away, and I had 2 years to do that. No illusions for making the team, but I joined the Florida Track Club in its charter membership year, and just got better every few months, and unexpectedly made the team. But I have to credit my friend Frank Shorter for offering me the opportunity to come up to Vail, Colorado, altitude training for 2 months prior to the trials. And that's when I came down, I had the greatest performance increase that I had ever had in the 10K. I improved about 2 minutes on my PR and qualified to get into the trials. And the trials were just an amazing experience. What benefited us from Florida is that it was very hot that year in Eugene, unusual hot year. So Frank finished first in the 10K, and I started in last place in the 10K and worked my way up because most of the runners went out way too fast, and I just picked them off one by one, finished second. And Jack Batchelor, our teammate, was in third place, coming off the final curve, but got passed by another runner. And while he was going by, he bumped the other runner, and Jack was disqualified from the results. So I took on the leadership role of pacing Jack through the marathon trials. And he had not run as long as he should run in order to be at that level, because he didn't think he was going to have to qualify in the marathon.
Right.
And so I paced him through and sort of pep talked him through the last 5 miles, and then right at the finish line, I dropped back so he could be the official third place finisher. And I just have to tell you that of all the things that I've experienced in competitive running, the helping of a teammate qualify for the Olympic team it's at the top.
Wow. That's amazing. It was interesting to me. We got to see a different example of that the other day in the Olympic trials. Just watching the teamwork that went on with Amy Cragg and Shalane Flanagan was just amazing to me. You're sitting here watching someone at mile 23 and mile 24 of a marathon. And actually it made me feel good hearing Shalane afterwards saying that she just wanted to give up, because I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who wants to give up at that point in time. But it's so inspiring to watch that teamwork in action too.
Well, it brought back good memories, and I tell you, I really treasure that experience. But to answer your question, the year after the Olympics, I decided that I wanted to help others get into this wonderful activity that changes their lives for the better if they do it in the right way. And so I opened a store called Fidipides, and I believe it's the first specialty running store that was established.
Wow.
But it was premature profit-wise. there weren't a lot of runners, so I had to do other things,
right.
And that's where I started developing the training programs, clinics, coaching sessions, and so forth. And I was asked to teach a course in beginning running in 1974. So I accepted that, and in this beginning running class, there really wasn't anybody that had done any distance running their whole lives. So I knew that we were going to have to do a good bit of walking, and so we divided up into 3 groups, and I did the run walk with each one of those groups all the way through the 10-week class. The thing that surprised me was not that every one of them finished either a 5K or 10K. It was that nobody got injured.
Wow.
And I'd never been with a group of 20 or more runners over 10 weeks in which nobody got injured. And I realized right then and there that it was the right insertion of walk breaks, the strategic insertion of walk breaks before you get tired, before you get injured. That was the reason for that. And that's where it started. And from that point on, in my classes and in my training groups, at first, mostly for beginners, I started developing strategies of running and walking. And just a few years later, my former beginners who were still using Run, Walk, Run were beating a lot of veterans. So the veterans wanted that too. And indeed, we're finding that not only does my strategic Run, Walk, Run method reduce injuries, allow for very quick recovery so that you can have a life even when you're training for a long event, but it also speeds up times in races over nonstop running.
That's amazing. Is it just a combination of things? Is it allowing certain muscles to recover better during the rest? Are you using different muscles during the run and walk? What can you put your finger on that really allows that to happen?
First of all, I have interviewed a number of anthropologists that study ancient man, and most of them tell me that our ancient ancestors really didn't do distance running. They mostly walked everywhere they went, and they would only run a short distance to get away from a predator or while on a hunt or jump over a snake or something like that. So inherently, according to the experts, we really weren't designed to run long distance nonstop. And when we try to do that, there's going to be a failure point at some time. So what the walk breaks do when placed early enough and often enough and regularly enough is that they keep erasing the stress buildup on the muscles and on the weak links. They also save energy resources. And so the benefit of that comes at the end when others who are running nonstop are slowing down. The run, walk, run folks are ready to just keep on going to the finish, passing people, and then have resources to enjoy their celebration afterwards.
Well, and I know one thing, and I know you would echo this, but hey, coming down the stretch of a race, it feels a whole lot better when you're passing people than to see people running past you left and right. It sure feels a lot different coming down the stretch.
And with Run, Walk, Run, almost everyone can do that. Almost everyone can be the passer rather than the passee.
Now, when you first started doing it, was it mostly for the shorter distance at the time? Because I mean, I would love to kind of get your thoughts on what has happened from a distance standpoint as well, and to see what you were doing back in the day. And now, I mean, there are more half marathons, being run on a weekly basis and a week, and same thing for the marathon distance that I've ever seen. And I know that you've ever seen too.
Well, I've been told by a number of experts who study demographics of running that Run, Walk, Run is, in their opinion, the number one reason why people are coming into running today. And I hear from these people every day. I average about 100 emails a day. Wow. And, of course, I hear from others in my clinics that I hold on the average one clinic a day year-round. And so what they tell me is they didn't even conceive of running until they heard about my method of running a certain amount that you can do and then walking. And so the point of Run, Walk, Run is to find the right strategy for you on any given day. And you're the captain of the ship. So if one strategy is not working right, you reduce the amount of running, increase the walking, or a combination of the two, and you can almost always find a strategy that makes you feel good and strong all the way through.
Are people often surprised? And I think I was at first at how I mean, there are people who are running at a very, very quick pace who are still doing the run walk. To people, and I think the thing that got me when I first started reading about it and talking with you about it and through the coaching was, I guess you don't think about if you're walking for 15 seconds or 30 seconds, you're not stopping. I mean, you're moving forward. So there's progress being made. So I was very surprised at the pace you're able to keep up doing a run walk.
Yes. I have actually heard from by using my method who could not break 3 hours when they ran nonstop. The fastest is a fellow who improved his time from 2:33 to 2:28.
Wow.
And the only thing he changed is strategically using walk breaks every mile from the beginning.
That is amazing. That is purely amazing. So, in the, would love to, how did the relationship with Run Disney come into effect? I one of the things I love was one of your Run Disney videos that you did, and I think we have the same commonality there. You said you like to Run Disney because it's fun, and I can think of a no greater place to run. So I know if there's a Run Disney event going on, you're probably going to be down there.
Well, I loved the idea right from the get-go of Disney promoting running and having a running event, because there is no organization I know of that makes something fun and also then opens the doors to the regular person out there. And indeed, this is what has happened. In my case, I was invited to come to the very first Walt Disney World Marathon and ran it. And then I just kept coming back and bringing my family each year.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 years ago, they awarded me my 20-year ring. And I'm going to keep doing this every year as long as I possibly can. But when Run Disney as a brand developed about 7 years ago, the leaders in that organization decided that they wanted to have somebody who would be a spokesperson, and they really looked at a number of people, but a couple of them told me that they kept coming back to me simply because I had been there for the whole span of their race there in January. And what has happened has really surprised both Run Disney and us, Galloway Productions, and that is that the Run Walk Run it just allowed a lot of these folks who have never participated in a running event to become runners. And I am at my booth for 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, at these expos at Run Disney. And I hear literally thousands of stories a year. It averages out to be about 1,500 individuals that come up and tell me their stories every single event. And they're wonderful stories. And the weight that is lost and the lifestyles that have been changed in a positive direction and the empowerment that has allowed these folks, because of the training journey, to then do other things in their lives. It's just wonderful because we do inspire one another.
Yeah, and I love the accessibility that the training has allowed people to have. And I'll just give you, for instance, I've been going down to the Run Disney weekend, the marathon weekends, I think since 2007. And this past year, I've now done this with my parents who are 68 and 70 years old. And to be able to see them out there doing this and believe they can do it, I love how it becomes available for so many people who can have this belief that, hey, I can do this. I mean, my parents didn't run these races until they were in their 60s. So to be able to get them to believe they can do these things is that's one of the coolest things about it, I think.
It really is. And there is a common belief among a pretty good percentage of those who go to the parks that if Disney gets behind something, there must be a good reason for it. And so they're more likely to try it out. My role in this is to provide a training method in Run, Walk, Run with the schedules that can lead them right up there. And if they do the right Run, Walk, Run, they can usually do it injury-free.
Yeah. I know we have a lot of questions, but I've also got a few here myself that I thought one of the things I thought about as we talked about the Run Walk method is potential mistakes that are made in it, and I made plenty of those. I'll bring a couple of mine. I wanted to get your reflections on, but I know one of the things. I think it was one of the first marathons I tried the Run Walk for you get. I think I got so excited the first half of that marathon that I probably didn't do my first walk break until probably the 6 or 7 mile mark. Is that a common mistake people make, is not taking those walk breaks soon enough in this?
It is, and a lot of folks over the years, when I talk about my method, will say, "Well, I tried your method and it didn't work." And I say, "Well, tell me." And they'll say, "Well, I was getting tired at mile number 18, so I started taking walk breaks." And you can't put it back in the bank. The concept is quite simple. If you take that first walk break way before you need to, within the first few seconds or minutes into an event, you can erase all the fatigue buildup. And if you do it regularly, the walk breaks regularly, you keep erasing that fatigue so that a person who's using the right run, walk, run will reach about mile 7.5 or mile 14 in a full marathon. And they only have half of that in fatigue. And you can use that later on. But it is a common thread among people who get in races. They feel so good in the beginning, and they're nervous, and they see all these other runners around them that they just keep running. And unfortunately, they spend their resources and they can't put them back.
Well, what's really shocking to me, and to this day, it's hard to wrap your head around this, but I have heard the term. I think you have to, putting money in the bank or time in the bank, and it's humorous when it comes to the marathon, because I'm sure you've seen it. What you think you can save 15 to 20 seconds a mile here, you're probably going to lose 3 or 4 minutes a mile down the road if you try that.
Yes, and that's been documented in several different studies. But the very best way to run your best time in an endurance event is a negative split, which means that you ran the second half faster than the first, and that means that you held yourself back in the first half so that you had those resources in the second half.
And as far as like the long runs go on the weekend, one of the things that your training certainly does is take people usually to a longer distance, whether they're training for the half marathon or the full marathon. Is that both a physical thing and a mental thing that you help people through to go that kind of distance in training?
It is both physical and mental, and both of them, of course, are equally important. But the fact is that if you have only run 20 miles and you are running a marathon, guess where those individuals tend to hit the wall? It's right around 20 miles. Right. So by going up to 26, you're going to have that stamina to go the distance. And for those that want to run, well, the surveys have been very clear on this. Those who used to run 20 miles and then in future training programs go up to 26 tend to improve an average of more than 15 minutes in a marathon. And those who used to run 26 and go up to 29 improve another average 11 minutes.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, the other thing that is most recent, would love to give you a chance to talk about this for people who haven't had a chance to experience yet, is that you just hosted your second annual Jeff Galloway 13-point run. I assume the third one is coming up again this December. Is that correct?
It is correct, and it is just a fun event in Atlanta, and it's held at a time when the weather tends to really cooperate. It's not hot, and it's usually not that cold. And I'll tell you, it's folks coming from all over the country, and in some cases all over the world. Just a great feeling of fellowship and fun. It's a beautiful course, too. It goes past a lot of our really good landmarks in Atlanta, the Margaret Mitchell House, Martin Luther King Center, the Jimmy Carter Library, and, of course, our beautiful Piedmont Park, which is where we finish.
Yeah, and I actually heard, and I know this is almost, hey, look, if you run in Atlanta, you're used to hills, but I hear it's actually not too bad as far as the hills go.
we have a lot of PRs on our course, and the reason is that even though we do have hills, I mean, we are in Atlanta, the starting elevation is significantly higher than the finished elevation. So we have a lot more downhill than we do uphill.
One last question. I know Brandon has some questions from the audience and so forth. I guess the last question, since you live in Atlanta, and I know we were talking about Disney a few minutes ago, are there any specific, I know this sounds crazy, but there are any specific challenges for training on a hilly environment, going to a flat? Do we have to adjust anything in training? I know that sounds like a strange question, but I didn't know if that changes. And I would imagine going, of course, from flat to hilly can be a challenge, but are there any specific challenges for people who train in a hilly environment and have to go run a flat course?
Actually, that is one of the most popular questions that our store staff at Fidipides gets every single day of the year.
Wow.
Because hills it's one of the top 2 or 3 challenges that people worry about.
Mm-hmm.
And they either have trouble with the uphill, or a lot of folks have trouble with the downhill.
Right.
And so what we found that really works is to shorten stride and put more walk breaks as you go up the hill.
Okay.
And then if your feet stay low to the ground and you don't let the stride length get too long running down the hill, you can fly.
Wow.
That's awesome. Well, Jeff, we've got some questions coming in from the audience. We know we don't have a ton more time with you, but we wanted to get to a few of those. And so a few that have been coming in, one is they're asking, I'm doing a 3-1. How hard would it be to go to running again? I used to run 100% but gain weight and stopped for a while. I had to rebuild my base.
Is the question going from a 3-1 up to nonstop running?
Yeah. How hard would it be to go to running again? So they're doing a 3-1 right now, and they're asking if it's hard to go to 100% running.
Well, each runner is the captain of their running ship. So you can determine whether you want to take walk breaks at all, and then in what frequency. First of all, we found that the shorter increments of running actually work better. And in the case of a 3-minute run and a 1-minute walk, it has worked a lot better for most people to do a 90-second run and a 30-second walk. We're finding that the maximum benefit of a walk break occurs during the first 30 seconds, and then to walk longer than that actually tends to slow people down during the second half of the long run. Now, all of that said, going to nonstop running is certainly fine for those on short runs, but what you would do is you'd just gradually build up to whatever distance you wanted to. I will caution you, though, in that most people who do that find that they run slower times, and the recovery rate is significantly longer when you run nonstop. But, I mean, anyone can choose to run any way that they want to.
That's awesome. Okay, we've got another question. This has to do with actual run walk programs. And so Jeremy is asking, how do I set up a Galloway run walk program in our area? He lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that could just be more in general. Can folks set those up locally if there's not one already?
Well, we would love to help with that. And actually, there is, you can either go to our website, jeffgalloway.com, or simply email our national director, who is Chris, Chris, at jeffgalloway.com.
Perfect. Sounds great. And how many of those do you guys have around the country right now?
We have around 80 to 85 right now.
Wow.
That's awesome. Okay, so this one is coming from, let's see, this is a funny one. This is coming from Vicky. She's asking, do you have to sign up like the rest of us less famous people for Disney? She says those Disney sign-up days are crazy.
Well, I don't have to go through the deadlines. I do have to sign up.
Yeah.
But, to go through the legal process. But Fortunately, I don't have to mark my calendar, but and the reality is that I travel so much, I would miss most of those deadlines.
Yeah. Now, do you go to all the Disney events?
Yes, I do. It's tough work, but somebody has to do it.
What's the next one coming up?
It is the Dark Side Star Wars
Nice.
in Orlando at Walt Disney World, Orlando.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Are you going to do the Paris one?
No, I have an event that I put on that same week, and I'm sorry I missed that.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've got another one coming in from Wendy Steiger. She's asking thoughts on run walk intervals for 9-minute mile or less. I've tried a 90-30, and it seems like too much stopping starting, which could be a problem in a crowded race. I've also tried different intervals from 3:1 to 4:30 with 30-second break, trying to run less than 4-hour marathon. My PR is 4:09, doing 3-minute, 30-second intervals. And I guess to expand on that, do you have any recommendations on doing run walk, but then trying to set some a little bit quicker times too?
Yeah, there are. The most common strategy today for that pace, a 9-minute pace, is to run 2 minutes and to walk 30 seconds. But a lot of folks are starting out a little more conservatively. They'll start out at 90-30, and then at 6 to 10 miles will shift over to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I recommend trying this out on a Tuesday or Thursday, in other words, a short run day each week, to do 4 or 5 1-milers, walking 3 to 4 minutes in between. And then on each one of those miles, try a different configuration of run, walk, run to see what works best and keeps you at that pace.
Gotcha. That's great.
Do you have a favorite one that you're using right now, Jeff?
Well, my wife Barbara and I do a marathon a month, so we run 12 a year.
Yep.
And for marathons, we've used just about anything you can imagine, including some quirky ones. But for marathons, we found that 15-15 worked best for us. And in half marathons, we use 30 seconds run and 15 seconds walk.
That's really good.
And this one might be a follow-up from that. It might get a little more specific, but Vicky is asking, she's a straight-out runner. She needs to save 5 to 7 minutes on her marathon time to Boston qualify. How could the Galloway method help me, and what interval should I try?
What is the pace per mile?
To qualify for Boston, we'll see if she'll actually ask it in the comments. But Trey, let's use you as an example. What's your qualifying time?
For me, I think it's 3:15. I think.
Okay, for your total.
Well, at a 3:15, we're talking about running for 5 minutes and walking 30 seconds, or running a mile and walking 50 to 60 seconds.
Gotcha.
Okay. That makes sense.
That's great.
And Vicky she just responded back. She says her halftime, her pace is 8-minute miles, and to Boston qualify, she needs a 8:25 pace.
8:25?
Yeah.
Well, she's on the cusp. Usually at that pace, it's about a 30-second slowdown up to a marathon. So she's definitely got the potential to do it. First, the run, walk, run at that pace is going to be a run for 3 minutes and walk 30 seconds. That's the most popular. 3-minute run, 30-second walk. Now, two things that have worked best for pulling that marathon time down is building that long run up to 29 miles. But she really needs to be running those long runs at 11 to 12 minutes per mile pace and do a 60-second run, 30-second walk, or even 30-30, 30-second, 30-second. It doesn't matter how slow you go on long runs, but the slower you go with more walking, the quicker you will recover because you get the same endurance. The other thing that I've found over the years that has brought marathon times down is doing 1-mile repetitions that are done on alternate weekends with the long run. So you run long one weekend, you do mile reps the next. You start with 4 of them, and you build up to at the end of the season to 14 of those mile repetitions, running those 30 seconds faster than goal pace in the marathon. And the extra long run and those 14 times 1 mile have been the 2 things more than anything else that have brought people under that standard.
It's amazing how it works. It sounds crazy, but hey, from personal testimony, it's shocking how it works.
Yeah.
It's one of these things that hard work pays off, but you have to be smart about the hard work.
Yeah.
And that's what we have tried to do over the years.
All right, so we've got one more question coming from the listeners, and we have one last one for you. And this one is coming from Dose 2B up in Chicago. She's asking, how about run, walk, run for a 50K? What should be adjusted differently from the marathon?
The longer the distance, it's even more important to be more conservative in the beginning, and particularly conservative by adding more walking to the mix. So if, say, a person was in a marathon was running 90 seconds and walking 30, then I would recommend, at least for the first half, or the first third rather, of a 50K, that the strategy, run, walk, run strategy, be 30-30, and then you could start going up to 60-30 if that was working, and then to finish off with whatever you feel like.
That's great. All right, so then the last question is, what is your favorite race experience, if you had to pick one from all your years of running?
I mean, it's not like you haven't had very many, we know.
Yeah.
So.
It's been, I actually went back and estimated how many races I've run, and it's somewhere around 1,000 races.
Wow. Good night.
So it's a lot of them. And,
Yeah.
And Barbara and I are really not slacking off. I mean, we're still running about 35 races a year.
Wow.
So we love them. I mean,
That's great.
It's just great to relate to people. But to answer your question, I have to say that my one experience that I will treasure for the rest of my life was in 1996, the 100th running of the Boston Marathon. My dad wanted that to be his last marathon, and I said, well, I'm going to be running with you. And I ran every step of the way with my dad at
That's
age
incredible.
75, and I tell you, I still get chill bumps.
That's incredible.
Just reminiscing. But at the end of it, as we were walking down to get our gear, several people came up to us and were talking with my dad and asking him how he did. And he said, well, I did okay, but if I hadn't been running with him, I would have gone a lot faster.
Yeah.
And I never disagreed with him. It was a fabulous experience.
That's awesome.
It's incredible.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on a phone call with us and chatting again. We love what you guys are doing. If folks want to keep up with you and the work that you're doing, where would you point folks just to keep up with you?
Well, go to jeffgalloway.com. There are a lot of resources there, and they're free. It has a lot of helpful tips, and it also gives you updates. jeffgalloway.com, and then for information on our wonderful race in Atlanta, jeffgalloway131.com.
Perfect.
That's great.
That's great.
Well, we had a blast chatting, so thank you so much.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time, Jeff.
Well, great to talk with y'all. You're doing a great job, and let me know if I can help.
Sure will. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Enjoy every endorphin.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.